order? Okay. I hope everybody had a chance to review the agenda. And if there's no changes or addition to this agenda, may I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second. Moving second to approve the minutes as is. All in favor?
Aye.
Secondly, I'd like to say good evening to everybody on the screen that's not present here. Welcome. Okay.
We got to wave. There's a
Thank you.
Anyway, we have the minutes attached. If everybody have had a chance to review the minutes, and if there's no changes or additions, corrections, I please have a motion for approval of minutes. Move it. The second.
Second.
And moving second for approval of the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
So the agenda and the minutes have been approved. Now we're gonna move to citizens' comments. I don't see any citizens here. Anybody on there? No? So there's no citizen comment at this time. We're gonna move down to financial update because everybody cares about money, so Kate, you gonna take the lead on this?
I will introduce Hayes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Hayes Williams. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. I've compiled y'all's financial statements for you. They're fairly easy. I don't know if y'all have them in front of you or on screen.
We do.
On screen, or do they have copies? Amanda?
Everyone should have a copy.
Okay, so I'll just do a quick run through. You got about $11,000 worth of interest income. Your expenditures for the year, you have professional fees, which is mainly to Beaufort. You have your land conservation easement of Henry Farms, your land conservation easement, the Dale PDR, your land acquisition of Bermuda Bluff, and then a holdover on Fort Fremont is a project. Give your total expenditures of $4.3 million. Your change in fund balance is the total is 4.3. Your beginning fund balance after y'all did the bond last year was about $19,798,000. And with that loss, you're now at $15,047,000. I'd like to point out that we do have some encumbrances left over for the remainder of the year, and mainly there with professional services of $44,500 and expenditures of Fort Fremont at $71,056. So your unobligated fund balance at this point, as of December, was $15,032,431. So that's kind of what y'all have left available.
A question on, does this include the passive park?
No, sir, it does not. That is a whole different. Fund. I've only been asked to account for the rural and critical piece.
Okay, so the passive park piece is part of the bond, but not part of this financial statement.
The passive park piece, the $5 million was split out into a different fund, and it is accounted for accordingly. There was I believe, an ordinance that Stephanie G did. I've never been asked to report on that. I'm happy to report on it. It will take me time to get the report together.
No, I was just curious because I know there's a certain set aside for passive parks out of the bond list.
Right. So of the $25 million, $20 million went to the purchase of real property, and the other $5 went to passive parks.
That answers my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and actually Stephanie has a comment to say about the financial report real quick.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Pardon my dog. So the as Hayes had mentioned, the funding for the passive parks was pulled out prior to the July 1st date of the financial report. Your current financial reports dated July 1 to December 31st of last year. And so there was a transfer of funds out of the 4,500 account into the 4,502 account, which is the capital projects account for the appropriate projects as per the ordinance. So that funding's already, like, it's already deleted from the $25 million bond that was received in 2020.
Okay.
However, I do want to point out on your current financial report, since December 31st, the Fort Fremont project has been completed and has been finalized. The PO has been closed and fully expended. And so that $71,000 of encumbered funds is actually available back to your account. There will be, after that, after this report, there will be no further passive parks being shown on your financial reports because all those are being taken care of out of my other account.
Okay.
Fort Fremont was just a holdover from the 2018 contracting, but that contract is now completed. Project is finished. The PO is unencumbered. So your next financial report should reflect that.
So in other words, that $71,000 was not spent on Fort Fremont?
Correct. We had a credit from the contractor because of some problems we had with them, and that's the approximate amount for the credit that we received back. So that is money that was not used. So it goes back into your fund balance.
That's a big nuance.
Okay.
But the encumbrance is there until it's liquidated. It was liquidated after December 31st. There's
Correct.
Great. And I'll also add on the due diligence piece under expenditures, it does appear, and it makes sense, as of through December 31st, Beaufort County paid for all of the due diligence on the DLPDR, but is being reimbursed for 50% of that due diligence since it was a joint REPI project. And I'm not going to wager a guess how long it's going to take to get that money from the military. So maybe it's come, but probably it hasn't, and it will come. And so that $63,000 in addition to the purchase price that y'all are familiar with will be reduced in half. So, hey, for my own curiosity, you can let me know when you receive that. Make a mental note, but it should come back.
Yeah, there are a lot of things coming in and out, but yeah, we'll be looking for it. Does the committee want me to also present a passive parks statement for this for the next?
If it's not a lot of trouble.
Stephanie.
I'm sorry. That is the Rural and Critical Lands Board does not oversee or have the purview over the passive parks account. So I would rather report that information myself if there are questions from the board, but that the mission of this board is for land acquisitions.
They're all Beaver County taxpayers. I'm happy to do whatever they need me to do. So anyways, if y'all don't need me anymore, I'll leave you with your meeting and I will talk. I will see you next time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Stephanie, you're saying that this committee has, cannot or is not allowed to review passive park funds, which is part of the $25 million bond?
No, sir, I'm not saying you're not allowed. I'm just saying the purview of the passive parks is not under this board. And I provide information upon request. So if there is request, then I'm happy to provide that. However, asking our chief financial officer to provide something that's not under the purview of the board, I did not feel was appropriate.
You want, I can address that if you want.
Okay.
The passive park, it's under the purview of the Natural Resource Committee. At one time, this board did play a part in it, but after Tony retired, if I'm thinking correctly, Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, the approval of the budget was actually done with the natural resource and full council, and the plan was done for the passive parks.
Under the natural,
Under natural resources and then the full council.
right?
But there wasn't the reason y'all were involved before is because there really wasn't a clear line of how that budget was approved or not, and we didn't have a plan until Stephanie came
Right,
for the passive park.
right, with her position, when they
But
created her
came with
position.
Responsibility to come
Right.
up with a plan and
Right.
a budget, and it
Right.
came under planning, which
Right.
comes under natural resources.
Right,
Let me,
But when Tony was still here, he had it, and it wasn't, because we didn't have a position, he did it as an extra duty, so to speak, so.
yeah, we would bring like plans forward and look at all that kind of stuff, because we had nobody to do, now we have a person
Now we have a
dedicated, and that's what Stephanie's doing now, and
But
so,
y'all are certainly, we can certainly ask, Hayes next meeting to, we can do that. You have, anybody has a right to see that, what's going on.
now, let me just ask the question.
Mhm.
If a property comes to our attention for purposes of acquisition by fee simple,
Mhm.
and we go through the deal, and all that, and as part of that, maybe I just misunderstand, that passive park could be a part of the use of that property.
True.
So when we're evaluating the property, aren't we also taking into consideration that component, which might be passive park, in our decision making?
You are, but not the budget for it, and not the plan for it.
Yeah, I
Evaluate that.
Yeah, I guess I just don't.
when you're I'm sorry, I can't, it's hard to hear. When you're evaluating a property for fee simple, public access is a consideration. However, whether it becomes a passive park, or the planning for that or the budget for that is not part of this board's purview, to my understanding. So yes, public access on fee simple properties is a criteria consideration as part of the evaluation criteria. And Kate, if you have that handy, maybe you can read through what that actually states. But purchasing something fee simple is having public access or creating a passive park is not the main criteria for the purchase of a fee simple property.
Definitely, let me ask you, if we're acquiring a property for $1 million, and some aspect of that might become, or would expected to become, a passive park, would any of the $5 million out of the bond issuance be used as part of the purchase of that property?
No, not the purchase. The $5 million that was allocated to me for passive parks was brought to county council as an ordinance to designate certain funding to certain high priority projects. The properties that you are purchasing fee simple now, for example, Bermuda Bluff, there's no funding associated with that. Y'all recommended to approve that fee simple purchase. It was approved by county council. It is incorporated into my work plan, but I currently have the money allocated to the priority projects as per the work plan that was approved by county council. And so there are many fee simple properties that do not have any funding associated with them, and I'll be working on other bonds or other monies or A or H tax funding or grant funding. Like, I have to get creative in trying to figure out how to, make those other lower priority projects come to fruition, but they may or may not happen in any given, in any near future.
Hypothetically, if we purchase a property for $1 million, it's possible, and subsequent to that purchase, using the 25%, 75% on the bond split, that you could be investing $250,000 of additional tax money to develop that as a passive park in addition to the purchase price.
No, that's not how it works. The the bond referendum said up to 20% of that bond referendum could be used for current, past, or future passive parks. So when I received that funding back in 2020, I went to, and actually in 2019, I went to county council with a list of priority fee simple, rural and critical passive park projects and asked them to earmark that $5 million to certain high priority projects. So that money is already earmarked to certain properties. So when you purchase a piece of property like the Bermuda Bluff property for $885,000+, it doesn't automatically get 20% of the $5 million that I have, because we've purchased over $165 million worth of land in 50 different properties.
Let me offer an example, let me try to frame this conversation in a different way and also make a suggestion that I think has been helpful in the past. Start with a suggestion, that is when we typically have done our annual retreat, there's been a passive park component where we looked over the work plan. Stephanie, you last year did a great job presenting kind of what the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 priorities of that work plan are. And so we probably need to refresh on that and do that again. Not to say that we have purview over it, since it's what's been presented already to county council, but that we should have familiarity with it. And I think, if we have familiarity, that'll give everybody a better ability to advocate for what's going on.
I was just curious whether passive park funding could be in addition to the purchase price
And
after the purchase.
And
I think the answer is yes.
That's the example, yes.
Yeah.
Art. So if you look at the financial form right now, under expenditures, land acquisition, Bermuda Bluff, the purchase price of that property was $860,000. The remainder, the 541, was for some due diligence costs. Now, Beaufort County owns that property. And y'all remember, we talked about the benefits of acquiring Bermuda Bluff because of its ability to provide water access and fishing resources. If Beaufort County was to decide that in order to enhance the fishing resources, there really needed to be a wooden platform, that construction and payment of the construction for that wooden platform would have to come from somewhere. It's not incorporated already in this 865. It's not going to come from the land acquisition side, but it could come from the passive park side or another grant source that Stephanie seeks out.
Do we get any insight into that planning in advance of the recommendation to purchase the property?
In advance of the recommendation to purchase the property?
With passive park, like, we see looking at it, and it could be one of our priority projects. Just take that into consideration.
Sure, yeah.
I would think
I think those are reasonable questions that certainly we ask of each other when the planning staff and contractors meet to think about proactive purchases, but also ones that y'all have discussed. Because I remember with Bermuda Bluff specifically, we had a conversation that the property included the road all the way out there, and that was a good thing, because then you were going to have to spend a bunch of money later on to improve the road or do some sort of improvements on property you didn't own. So I think we do have those discussions. We can make a point to do it more pointedly, because it's important to say, okay, like, we're acquiring this property, what type of upfit does it need? And does that negate the value of the purchase price or not, but just to manage expectations.
Public access is one of our criteria.
Yeah, absolutely. Public access is one of our criteria, and I think what you're asking, Art, is how much money is it going to take us to get to that public access? And does that weigh in on y'all's decision making? It can, and we can make a point to point it out even more than we do.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, this is a good discussion. Thank you.
I think that's a good idea. We can talk more about it when we do have a retreat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just also to point out, the work plan is on my website. So on the Passive Parks website and the county, on the county website, the work plan is right there for everybody to see. The priority table is there. The tier 1 priorities are listed. Those are the ones that currently have the funding available. So if anybody is interested in seeing what that is, then that's just all right there.
That's great. We also did include it in the annual report, so far as, what properties have had their conceptual plans completed. And I think one thing that went really well with respect to passive parks this past year is the concept plan meetings that you held, Stephanie, the public meetings to collect feedback. So the fact that, there were online surveys and public meetings was helpful in my opinion. We did highlight that for county council. So.
Any more questions? Thank you, Stephanie.
My pleasure.
All right, next on the agenda is, you want to go through this language of the application?
Sure. So if Amanda, if you don't mind, Amanda prior to this meeting sent around a copy of the rural and critical lands application. This is what an applicant, whether it's someone like Town of Hilton Head, the Town of Port Royal, City of Beaufort, or, the Open Land Trust or a land trust and an applicant, an easement holder and an applicant, they might fill this out, property owner. At the last meeting, when we discussed what is executive session and how it needs to be done, Beek asked for some advisory language on the application itself, let the property owner know, what part of the application was immediately publicly available. So if Amanda can put
Trying, sorry,
that's
gotta give me a minute here.
Propose that we just make it more clear on this application, and add some introductory language that says, all applications are reviewed on a quarterly basis, and that as appropriate, applications are further reviewed by this board and by natural resources. I think this is known information, but it's good to overstate it. And then include something that says, all items with an asterisk may be discussed during the public meetings of the board and are therefore part of the public record. And what I'd like for y'all to consider is not only this language, but what portions of the application you'd like, if you like this language, to mark with that asterisk. I have some ideas, but I'll stop there and get some feedback.
I would say for sure the expected price, purchase price.
You want not publicly available?
Not
Publicly available, not marked with an asterisk. So that was Art's request not to mark expected or owner's price expectation with an asterisk. I agree. Are there other thoughts on the language in general? And Beek, I'll ask you pointedly since it was your suggestion. If this meets your objective or put you on the spot, but certainly anyone can answer.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
There is no way where, no place in this application that talks about, lack of a good word, what's the word they use? No, you have,
Criteria?
no, not bacteria, it's not pesticides, village or that sort of stuff.
Yeah, contamination.
Contamination, that's the word I'm looking for. There's nothing here that talks about that. And sometimes contamination may just be diesel fuel,
Yeah.
Blah, blah, that sort of stuff. You may want to put that in there and make it a penalty, I guess. Because if you do due diligence or then you spend a lot of money, then they knew it and then tell you about it.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, they should be, subject to paying that back.
You want that to be non-disclosed by the owner or disclosed publicly?
I think that should be disclosed publicly. I mean, it should be disclosed to you. So if you disclose to you publicly,
I agree.
In the application.
in the application, yeah.
That would put a burden on them to disclose it.
Yeah.
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 There was one in Southern Beaufort County, we did due diligence, found something a few years ago, remember?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, for the board's benefit, a phase one analysis
Yeah.
is always part of the due diligence. It's part of our due diligence, part of the conservation bank and federal grant. It's a very standard thing, but I like the idea to put the onus on the property owner or the applicant to just call it out up front so that.
I think it was construction debris.
Okay, yeah, something even.
Yeah, even something like that.
Mhm.
But they are covered because they say to the best of your knowledge.
Correct,
So there
right,
could be
yeah.
an amendment to that.
I didn't know that.
So that-
Okay, I like that. Great. Other feedback?
Just a question. In the past, have people approached thinking maybe of doing something like this, but did not want it known that they were thinking of selling their property or doing something that, why would we keep it private? Why would we go into executive session, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so in my experience, in this role, I haven't heard from applicants concerned one way or the other. I think the concern for discussing things in open versus executive session, one of the questions that's come about has been, well, then if you're applying to the program, it suggests a willingness to sell, right? Which is what you just pointed out. Does that increase our likelihood to be outbid? And because we can pay appraised value at the end of the day. And if, your neighbor wants to sell to the Rural and Critical Lands Program for appraised value, that's great. If then your neighbor next door says, well, I can offer you appraised value in half, maybe we missed an opportunity in that regard. So I think that was part of the discussion about executive session. There were other points that were raised about why we may or may not want to go into an executive session, but the concern about, a price escalation or losing an opportunity certainly came up. That relates to
That's a good point in this current market.
It's certainly crazy in this current market. And it may be completely out of our control whether we're in public session or executive session, to be honest. But I mean, I think that's part of the consideration. Is that a fair characterization for folks that have raised that concern?
Yep.
I think the colony actually lent itself just that. We eventually got Pink Colony, but it went up to $16 million at one time. Yeah.
The county paid
No.
6.5, I think.
Yeah. After bankruptcy and everything else, but it did go up there, and we were literally chasing it at one time. Yeah.
Up to the appraised.
We chased it up to 8 million, and we stopped, and then it just went up to.
And it went on.
Yeah.
And we talk about, in the land trust side of things, obviously all of these deals require a willing landowner because oftentimes protecting one's property is the quote unquote right thing to do, but they may get paid more to do something else. So that willingness of the landowner certainly factors in. And oftentimes it intersects with issues like estate plans and taxes and family and, all of those really thorny, fun things that no one likes to talk about. And I think that's part of the sensitivity that we just all have to go into these projects with, being real sensitive to things that we may not know the full story on and relationships that are precious and those types of things.
I think one that's relevant here for this body here was Henry's Farm. Because we were actually trying to acquire that property. So it's like negotiating in public with, with the Henrys, and it just kept, we never got the 600 acres, but we were able to get
88.
the 88 with the deal within internally. So, yeah.
Okay, and on the application, we're talking about the ownership.
Mhm.
Does this require that all the owners of the property be signatures on the application, or just one of the owners?
Just one of the others.
Just one of the
These aren't done in a vacuum. We'll certainly we all have follow-up conversations with the applicant. So, if it's one property owner, but there's reason to think they don't have the right to put their name on the line, you know.
I'm just thinking of a family situation where you have, say, some of the kids want to sell and some don't, you know, but.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, and this is kind of a different bucket of questions, this is not a contract or a restrictive, yeah, this is the beginning of a conversation.
Okay.
Other feedback on the language that's proposed to add kind of at the top of the application, the suggestion that Councilmember Glover has made about a new question regarding any known, to the best of their knowledge, any known contamination, and or anything you'd like to make sure you mark with an asterisk so that it's clear to be part of the public record.
Oh, and I also had, from one of the lawyers about like, we will probably redact people's address, phone number.
Sure.
So that won't be made public. But.
Okay. So, I know it's hard for y'all on Zoom, but what Amanda just said, obviously under applicant and property owner name information, we can redact things like email and cell phones so they're not flashing around the internet somewhere.
Yeah.
But when I was thinking about things that might be marked with an asterisk to just, put up on a slide, put up in public session, and then we may or may not go into executive session after that, it would be things like who is the applicant, who is the property owner, and then, some combination of the address or the property tax number. I don't know what y'all are comfortable with, but those are things that came to my mind. It protects then price expectation. It protects, other information, and even that about purchase agreement, kind of doesn't necessarily, perhaps doesn't need to be immediately available, whether it's CE or
And again, it's a further down the right, but are there any encumbrances on the property? Such as drilling rights or anything like that that would prevent it?
Of course, they may not know that.
They may not know,
I mean,
that.
obviously.
As we learn.
It's to the best of their knowledge.
Sure.
So that's in line with the historic importance of they may not know that, that's why you bring that up.
Yeah.
We could go a little further and ask for, a short sentence on why this property fits the needs of the rural and critical program, if that was something y'all wanted to do.
When would that come out? Mineral rights, would that come out? An entitled search?
It's in the title search, yes, sir. And that's part of the due diligence. Title search is the piece of due diligence we typically do first.
And there's been plenty of projects in the past that we have done due diligence on, thinking it was going to be great, and then run into all sorts of issues, and just the project just never moved forward after that. Especially when you get into like title issues, like if it's heirs property and you got like 30 people, that kind of stuff has happened.
One example is a lawsuit on the property.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So. Any other feedback?
Not for me. I'm good.
No, not for me.
Steve, does this meet?
None here.
Does this meet your need when you proposed the idea?
Are you talking to me, Kate?
Do you think this achieves your objective?
Yes, I think it does. Main thing is that people should know that it's public information that they're putting down.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. Item number 8, we had our discussion with this, Amanda, you want to take the lead or?
Didn't you had something else on here, didn't you? For that?
Yeah, well, so item 8, a discussion of when projects should be in executive session. I think last month we heard from Tom Kevany. And, my short sentence takeaway of his very helpful presentation was that it's helpful to do as much as possible in public session, but that a board like you all may choose to go into executive session at your choosing. And for those specific purposes, like contractual negotiation. And so if y'all have any, further thoughts on when projects should be in executive session, you're welcome to offer them at this time, just for the good of the group. We can also continue to, this can be a live question depending on the project and the applicant. I think the most recent example we started with in January, we had 2 public entities that were the co-applicants. And so, some examples may look different than others, but obviously that's y'all's call. And if you have any additional thoughts on when you'd like to discuss an executive session or not, you're welcome to offer them at this time, and we'll continue to, conduct these meetings responsibly, both for the rules, the public, and the landowner.
Let me ask you something. With this agenda, can you put executive session on here, whether we going on the top? Because, something might come up in the meeting that we may need for executive session.
Yeah.
My understanding from Tom last month was yes. Like if you guys, if we have a project coming forward, like the Beach City Road one, and you guys decided that you wanted to hold a quick executive session to discuss some things in executive session first, then evidently, yes, you can call it and say, we need to have a quick executive session, go in there, talk, come back out, and then finish the agenda with the project in open session. That was my understanding, and I will check with Tom on that and make sure, but is that your understanding, Alan?
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah, so you can make
have to
it.
make a motion to go into it.
It doesn't
have to be on the agenda.
It doesn't have to be on the agenda, but I know that they were real careful for a while about when we started doing it. We used to do
If you don't have
executive.
it on the agenda, you need 2/3 votes to go into.
That's what it is, 2/3 vote, yeah,
So it's best to have it on the agenda.
just in case.
Just so you don't have to do it. Just in case
Right.
you choose not to do it.
Right,
We just put it on the agenda whether we use it or not.
When there's projects.
Yeah.
but it used
Well,
to,
whatever comes up, yeah.
it used to be, we just had to say executive session. Then they started saying, no, we actually got to put what you're talking about. That's when we had to start naming things. And then we did the names for a while. That was like 2019 A, B, C. And then we started, anyway, that's where that came from. But I think with the law now, you have to actually put why you're going in executive session to talk about a specific project or properties to purchase, whatever it may be. But I think I have some
Amanda and
generic
I have
language.
to have
Yeah.
that boilerplate, like so if there's a project, we can give y'all the information about how to say it, but yes, we do have to.
But yeah, so if it's not on the agenda, you're at 2/3 vote, and then you can put it on the, and then go into executive session, come back out, and then, but usually if we're gonna have one, we know ahead of time and go ahead and put it on there,
I personally would trust you guys because you know these projects and you know what you're dealing with the owners or the applicants. And I would trust you guys to be able to judge when you think there's something here that we need to go into executive session. I can't imagine that there would be something come up that we would say, oh, we shouldn't be discussing that. Let's go into executive session.
Yeah, but to Wolf's point, if we can just put it on there, it doesn't really matter. We don't have to just put it as, citizen comments, executive session, and we just don't do it. And so we never have to worry about it.
Yeah.
2/3.
And anytime we're going to be discussing any project.
We have the option to do it.
Other feedback, thoughts? Thank y'all for being so thoughtful about this. I think it's really important that we take great care with how we treat applicants and how we respond to the needs of the public, whose tax dollars we're, looking after. So thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, I have some monthly updates for you, as well as a recap of our, late February, early March site visit, of our first site visit. So I'll ask Amanda to pull up the monthly note, and I know last month I told you I would get them to you really early. didn't keep up my streak. But we've had a couple new inquiries this month, totaling us to about 6 inquiries around the county, which has been great. Keep in mind when you talk to folks about this program and you talk to potential applicants, the application deadline is March 31st. So we both, reach out to landowners and react to landowners, and y'all are an important part of that messaging. So 6 new inquiries during this application period. We hope to have some great projects to bring you. There was some press on protected land. One piece in particular I'd like to highlight was a February 13th column in the Island Packet about the wildlife management area, Webb Wildlife up in Hampton County. It's really an incredible property. We're about to enter spring wildflower season, so I wanted to highlight it for you if you are interested in a morning or day trip. The article does a great job talking a little bit more about Webb. I know Chris has taken master naturalist classes out there. There's amazing, water access and kayaking opportunities. And it is part of this larger regional greenbelt. When we talk about other organizations and partnerships, obviously DNR and what goes on in counties around us is important. In today's Thursday, right? So today's copy of the Island News, Kristen, our executive director, was quoted just to highlight the thankful piece of the military crash from last week, which is, that the jet did go down on protected property, which is, if there's a silver lining to any of that, it is that the property was protected and that there were not homes or an abundance of people underneath the airplane, so that both of the pilots were able to walk away safely, which is really wonderful. We did speak to the landowners, obviously, with the conservation and the restricted easement on the property. There's some, post-crash work investigation documenting those types of things, but the landowners are well, the pilots are safe. And
Is that the standard?
it is. Mm-hmm. And really, I think a heartening piece for me in that regard is the military team that you've seen in and out of these meetings is really a local team, calling landowners, calling people, calling us, making sure everybody is okay and accounted for. And it's really nice to see the community come together in events where we need to respond quickly. So highlight that. Other kind of miscellaneous things that are happening this month. The PALS program is working on their master plan. So I know, we're rural and critical land acquisition, there's passive parks, but there's active parks too. And I'm sure some of your friends and colleagues and neighbors ask you about the active parks. So I want to highlight that you can comment on the active park master plan at playbeaufortcounty.com. And if you'd like, there's a meeting at the Green Street Gym in the city of Beaufort tonight. So you can follow us to the meeting at 6 p.m. if you want to participate in the active park side of things. On the passive park side, Stephanie just had a press release about the Okeechobee River Park, which shows some of the master plans. So take a look at that release as well. And then on the 14th, County Council will have their second reading of the ordinance that you all chose to comment on as a board, which is the rezoning of 19 passive park properties to T1. Our letter of support for that rezoning was submitted to the record last meeting, and then second and third reading will be public hearings. So you're welcome to join for those meetings if you'd like.
Kate?
Yeah.
Can I make a quick clarification for that Okeechobee River Park press release?
Sure.
The title of that is slightly misleading.
Okay.
The Okeechobee River Park funding for the actual park planning and construction was approved by County Council back when the development agreement was signed a couple years ago now. This article actually is referring more for the funding for Graves Road itself. So it's a press release that kind of combines the park and the road, but the recent approval by County Council for funding was for the $1.3 million to reimburse Mr. Graves for the construction of Graves Road. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. What I took away from the release was the image and the map. So I'd recommend that, and then you all can be more attentive to detail. Thank you, Stephanie. At the most recent county council meeting, sorry, I'm getting all my days mixed up. On Monday, I presented our annual report to Natural Resources. I have some additional hard copies if you all would like them. And we'll be printing these to put out at area kiosks like here at Crystal Lake and other places. But presented the annual report and also let Natural Resources Committee know. I wanted to let y'all know about this opportunity. Coastal Expeditions is a boat provider, and they are partnering with the Open Land Trust to do some tours of the Windy River area to highlight the protected land in that corridor. And we would love y'all to join on March 24th if you'd like. It'll be about 40 minutes apiece in the afternoon, 3 to 5. So not that full 2-hour time if your schedule doesn't allow, but a little 40-minute enjoyable boat trip, which is a different way to do a site visit, obviously, but is a unique opportunity that we'll have this month. So please put that on your calendar as well, and you'll hear more from me about that with details hopefully tomorrow when I get that together. All right, and then the last thing I want to talk about is just the site visit that we enjoyed together to Three Sisters, because like with the boat tour and other upcoming site visits, it will be one of many we'll get to do together this year. Thank you to everyone who attended, and even those who couldn't. I know you all really worked hard on your schedules, and I appreciate that. So I would just like to summarize, again, we're talking about 145 acres on the Okeechobee Colleton River that was protected in 2004. We were able to meet the Three Sisters who farmed the property. And I did create a short video with a, really embarrassing voiceover. But y'all hear my voice all the time. So what Amanda's pulling up on the screen is a little write-up. It also includes a map, which I hope will be helpful to you. To show that it is part of over 1,400 acres that are protected in the Okeechobee River corridor. And for those who are able to attend, I'd love to hear any feedback you want to share with the whole group.
Sorry, hang on.
That's okay.
Well, I saw one of the owners that Saturday. They said, well, a lot of y'all out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We always meet up at the farmer's market.
That's right.
Yeah.
Y'all usually have booths right across from each other.
There you go.
Yeah.
All that.
Okay. Anybody else want to offer any thoughts?
It was good. It was interesting. Nice to hear what they're doing there and how the property came under protection and the families.
Yeah, also the history of indigo and how those seeds got from Antigua
Isn't that neat?
to that farm.
That's so amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a whole write-up of the family. Okay.
Yeah.
I need to see if that video download is still on.
Yeah. You can refresh it. You refresh it, then it should come up.
Not too much stuff on the screen.
That's okay. I know.
We will
I'm very
refresh it.
demanding. Just a bit, like at the up at the top of the bar.
Here.
So they do tours. Three Sisters. A question in the room is, when is the public allowed on the property? They used to do tours for different garden clubs and master gardener groups and things like that. They really haven't done much of a tour since COVID. And they were very, aware of how many people the property can accommodate without, being loved too much. So the video might take too long to download, but we'll send it around and you all can just kind of take a look. I think, this lines up with our goals to market the successes of the Rural and Critical Lands program and really share in our shared accomplishments. So Amanda and I are meeting with folks from the county channel. We're going to continue to have conversations with the public information officers like Chris, who you met at the last meeting, and talk about ways that we can really talk about the benefits of this program. And one of the takeaways that that I had visiting Three Sisters, both for kind of my tree site visit and the visit with you all, is that in 2004, it was a really bold decision to protect 150 acres in Bluffton. In 2022, there aren't many properties that are 150 acres in Bluffton. So think about 15 years ago, 2004, how progressive and forward thinking it really was at the time to say, this is an important place, we want to protect it forever. We benefit from that now, right? But in 2004, there were still housing developers knocking at the doors and all of the things. And so the opportunity to protect that property then was bold. I think I would argue it was the right thing to do. I'm thrilled the board and the council made that decision. I'm thrilled the family made that decision. But I think about the environment that they made that choice in. It was a rapidly developing, we are still, one of the fastest developing places on the East Coast, and Bluffton was on the map then too. So I'm really thankful for that decision and that opportunity. And when we share the pictures, those of you who were unable to join will hopefully get a feel for it as well. But yeah, we have fun.
Yeah.
All right.
One of the takeaways I got from Kate was that the decision for the family, that particular offspring of the family, to preserve that 145 acres or so, their relatives took the other route, which is to sell. And it really brought a lot of friction in the family because it wasn't actually a family-owned piece of property back there. And if it weren't for the downside side on real estate, that was the only reason the county was able to pick up the 200-something acre picnic colony, which was a perfect piece of property at one point. We don't know what we're going to do with it, but it's still a gorgeous piece of property. I don't care how you look at it and stuff. And it's basically being preserved.
Yeah.
That was the other half of the family.
Yeah.
That was the other half, that sold it, but got caught up in bankruptcy.
That's like Island Farm.
Yeah.
Island Farm was
Exactly.
bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And now Picnic Colony's got it.
That's probably not.
Yeah, she's one of 20 relatives. So this is a big, like so many of these properties, families with deep roots, families with lots of relatives. And what I also appreciated hearing is the role that a conservation easement plays in helping families retain the land from an estate taxes perspective. And, really making it affordable for families to keep property when it's protected. So, yeah. All right.
Can I get up? I just got one more question. We have a timeline of our annual retreat, close to a timeline.
We do not. That's a good question. I think typically we did it last year in May, but y'all have done, June.
Well, it's moved over the years. That we used to start in February and then we started doing it in March, but then it ended up coinciding with county council's retreat and so we tried to do it because when is y'all's retreat, or Alice? Watch us plan our retreat. It'll be the same month y'all have yours.
Do y'all have a preference looking at the months ahead, April, May, June?
I think we kind of already had it
We
because we
did
had a
in
budget
November.
retreat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
June will be better. Okay, bring back a couple of dates.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And if those of y'all on Zoom, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a phone call if there's dates that work better for you while I prepare those dates. But looking ahead, April, May, June.
Okay.
And then if you want to have it somewhere, like if we want, since we did it with Wooden Point last time, maybe this time, like I can talk to Stephanie and see if we can do it at like Fort Fremont now that the Fort Fremont Center is open, or, throwing it
I
all
was
at-
just gonna recommend that, actually, that Fort Fremont might be a really nice place to go, because the History Center is gonna be, have some interpretive stuff inside with the Friends. We could ask the Friends to do an interpretive tour for us, to do a docent-led tour. I think that would be really fun for them.
Okay,
A great idea.
okay.
Thanks, guys.
Okay,
Okay, so you want dates emailed to you?
Yes, please. Or, general preferences.
okay, I just want to thank everybody for attending, everybody on Zoom and everybody present here. Thank you so much for the active role. And, if we have no other business to attend, I have a motion for adjournment.
I so move.
Moving second for adjournment, adjourn.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
See you later. Bye.